Please be seated.
Messages from Her Honour, the Honourable, the Lieutenant Governor.
The Honourable President of Treasury Board and the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I've received certain messages from Her Honour the Lieutenant Governor, which I now transmit to you.
All rise, please. The Lieutenant Governor transmit estimates of certain sums required by the offices of the Legislative Assembly for the service of the province for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2021, and recommends the same to the Legislative Assembly. The Lieutenant Governor transmits estimates of certain sums required by the government for the service of the province for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2020, and recommends the same to the Legislative Assembly. Please be seated. The Honourable, the President of Treasury Board and the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the 2021 offices of the Legislative Assembly estimates, as well as the 2021 government estimates. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the 2020-23 Government of Alberta Strategic Plan and the Budget 2020 Ministry Business Plans.
Government motions. Motion number 4, Honourable Mr. Taves.
The Honourable, the Minister of Finance and the President of Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I now wish to table the Government's Budget 2020-23 Fiscal Plan and move Government Motion 4 that the Assembly approve in general the business plans and fiscal policies of the Government. Mr. Speaker, it's a great honor to rise today in this House and table this Government's budget for 2020. This budget continues the responsible 4-year fiscal plan that started with Budget 2019, a plan to get Albertans working, to make life better, and the pledge to boldly stand up for Alberta. Albertans overwhelmingly endorsed our commitment to eliminate the largest deficit in our province's history and bring government's finances back into balance. I'm pleased to share that we're on track to eliminate the deficit. In fact, our deficit is $1.2 billion lower than we projected in Budget 2019. You're here. This means that the Alberta taxpayers will pay $35 million less in debt servicing costs. Getting to a balanced budget will provide a solid fiscal foundation from which Albertans can confidently face the future and seize its opportunities. A balanced budget means that millions and then billions of dollars in interest payments to bankers and bondholders can be diverted into the services that Albertans need. In short, my goal as Finance Minister, my motivation is to lay a strong fiscal foundation for economic prosperity for this generation and those to come. To eliminate the deficit by 2022, this budget continues the plan to reduce government operational spending by less than 3%. More importantly, it includes modernizing the way services are delivered, ensuring that Albertans are getting full value for their tax dollars. It includes reprofiling expenditures to ensure that we're providing for our most vulnerable, and it will ensure the sustainability of public services into the future. Since 2014, many Albertans have been out of work, and today's unemployment rate is over 7%, and there's not been a business, a community, or family that's been untouched by this crisis. From the very start, even before we were elected, we made jobs the #1 priority, and not by growing government. Albertans know that government does not create wealth or prosperity. Government policies can either support growth or impede it, but they cannot create it. A robust economy is wealth created that's built on the effort and investment and ambition of its citizens and businesses. Government's role is to provide a business environment that is nimble, predictable, and one where there's a high correlation between effort and risk and reward. Alberta's history is full of remarkable stories of innovators, mavericks, risk-takers, and determined, hard-working people from all walks of life drawn to the boundless opportunities our province offers. The freedom to pursue dreams and the common-sense work ethic of the people is how Alberta became a magnet for entrepreneurs and investment and earned the reputation as the wealth and job creation engine of the nation. I'm pleased to present in this budget a blueprint for jobs. This blueprint will support our key sectors of energy and agriculture and forestry, where we're naturally strong, and leverage our advantages to support sustainable economic diversification, innovation, and business attraction in technology, aviation, and the financial and tourism sectors. Our government will move quickly to evolve as goals are met and new opportunities emerge. This plan will form the basis of a relentless cross-government focus to support economic growth and job creation. In Budget 2020, we're continuing to take a broad-based approach to taxation, where government doesn't pick winners and losers, but instead creates a competitive business environment where capital flows freely without government prejudice or bias. To that end, we're cutting business taxes and red tape, balancing labor laws, and freeing up interprovincial trade and refocusing Alberta's international offices on investment attraction. Alberta now has a 10% corporate tax rate, down from 12% when we took office. That's the lowest in the country. And when we reach 8% in 2022, we will be one of the lowest jurisdictions in North America. CNRL cited the job creation tax cut and the curtailment exemption for new drills from the conventional basin as reasons for planned drilling activity increases in 2020. Alberta's credit unions support our decision to lower corporate taxes, as these reductions allow them to increase investment in their local communities and lend more to Albertans seeking to build the province. Economists have consistently shown that tax reductions combined with regulatory certainty lead to economic growth and job creation. Budget 2020 continues with this approach, and we expect more positive investment announcements to come. We brought back common sense labor laws that provide balance to both employers and workers, but we're not done yet. We will use public input from online engagement last fall to revisit how Alberta's labor laws should address vacation time, holiday pay, youth employment rules, and where and how employment standards should apply. Expanding our economy starts with expanding trade, and that starts right here in Canada. Alberta is leading by example in opening provincial borders to trade, and so far, we've removed more than 80% of our exemptions under the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. And we continue to call on all other provinces and territories to make Canada a true economic union and show the world that Canada is open for business and investment. Like provincial borders, red tape is also a barrier to economic growth, one that we're tackling head-on and with real economic benefits. We're clearing the backlog of grazing leases waiting for approval by extending 20-year leases for ranchers who go above and beyond environmental standards. We passed the Farm Safety and Freedom Act, which cuts red tape and provides common sense exemptions from the Labor Code while ensuring basic safety standards on all farms and ranches. We've reduced delays for forest management agreements that support forestry jobs and ensure the best environmental and resource management outcomes. And our work is being recognized. In January of this year, 9 months after taking office, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business gave Alberta a B-, up from an F, on red tape reduction. And while we have a good start, a B- is not good enough. Much work remains. Budget 2020 continues the commitment to cut red tape by a third. Budget 2020 allocates $75 million over 3 years to focus the work of Alberta's international offices on investment attraction, cross-sector coordination, and focused marketing. We need the world to know the many business opportunities that exist in Alberta and that our actions back our claims that we're open for business. Indigenous communities have tremendous potential as they take their rightful role in our economy. Budget 2020 provides up to $1 billion to the new Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation to backstop Indigenous equity investment and ownership of major energy infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, Alberta has a world-class energy resource and an industry that reflects the value of that asset. We are global leaders in energy exploration, production, transportation, and environmental technology. Our energy industry has been the primary driver of our economy and of the economy of the nation. Getting energy to market is key to our prosperity. And while we're pleased that work is underway in the Trans Mountain Pipeline, we are pressing the federal government to get firm guarantees on the completion date and assurance that the rule of law will be swiftly enforced in the event of illegal protests. Hear, hear. And Trans Mountain is not the only pipeline at play. With plans to optimize existing pipelines, the anticipated completion of Enbridge Line 3, and TC Energy's planned resumption of Keystone XL, additional export capacity is inching forward. And speaking about pipelines, I want to be clear. This government will do everything in its power to ensure pipelines necessary for economic growth and job creation are built as quickly as possible. Until then, we'll be looking for increased crude shipments by rail. We have offloaded to the private sector all of the crude by rail capacity the previous government irresponsibly committed Albertans to, and we're expecting rail shipments to exceed 500,000 barrels per day in the near term. Since forming government, we've fought hard for the natural gas sector, working with industry to improve coordination in shipping and maintenance protocols, which has led to increased prices and price stability. There remains great growth potential for energy. The world will need fossil fuel energy for decades to come, and Alberta, with its energy sector committed to environmental and social excellence, is the rational place to produce it. To that end, we will highlight to the world Alberta's best-in-class environmental, social, and governance credentials through initiatives, including those of the Canadian Energy Centre, to maintain the confidence of investors and ensure jobs in Alberta are defended. We are seeking federal approval of flow-through shares or other tax instruments to further increase job-creating investment in environmental activities. This would create jobs by increasing reclamation of abandoned oil and gas wells. But we're not sitting on our hands while we wait for a federal response. Our government will increase our loan to the Orphan Well Association. This investment is expected to create hundreds of jobs in regions where they're badly needed and will result in a significant increase in the reclamation of abandoned sites. Mr. Speaker, while this government is a staunch supporter of our energy industry and believes it has great potential for additional growth, we're also on track for continued economic diversification. And diversification starts in the energy industry itself. Budget 2020 continues government's $1.1 billion commitment to the petrochemical diversification program that turns ethane, methane, and propane into plastics, fabrics, and fertilizers. Continuing the program encourages a sector that has great future in Alberta with low-cost feedstocks, a talented workforce, and essential infrastructure. And Alberta energy is more than oil and gas. Renewable energy is a growth opportunity, and industry is responding. Two companies, Calgary-based BHE Canada and Suncor Energy, are investing $500 million in wind and solar projects. In fact, after we returned Alberta to an energy-only market, private companies have announced more than $2.7 billion in various electrical generation projects.
No subsidies.
Further to the environment, our government will work with industry to continue reducing environmental impact of our energy production. Our Technology Innovation and Emissions Reduction Program, or TIER, puts the cost of reducing emissions where it belongs, on large industrial emitters, instead of on the shoulders of families and seniors.
Here.
More than that, the TIER program will support new GHG reduction technologies that have real potential to cut global emissions. Agriculture in this province has been an integral part of our history and heritage. George Lane, one of Alberta's most distinguished and innovative cattlemen at the turn of the 20th century and a founding member of the Calgary Stampede, had an unshakable confidence in the future of Western Canada and a vision of Alberta as the greatest farming and ranching region of the world. It's said his vision had a considerable effect on immigration and investment, and I would echo his unshakable confidence today. Our farms and ranches are global leaders in innovative productive practices and the use of technology, resulting in high-quality products which are produced with less energy, less water, fewer acres, and lower emissions. Food and beverage processing provided jobs to more than 26,000 Albertans in 2018, making it the province's largest manufacturing employer. A blueprint for jobs seeks to attract $1.4 billion in investment to grow agriculture and food exports over the next 4 years. This will create 2,000 jobs and grow the sector by 8% per year. Technology is increasingly a foundation of Alberta's economy. Our primary sectors, such as energy and agriculture, have driven technological advancements and are in turn sustained by ongoing innovation. Alberta is home to one of 3 Canadian artificial intelligence hubs, and the AI ecosystem has seen an incredible upswing in growth with the attraction of research labs and an increased number of AI startups. We know that the startup companies of today are the job-creating industries for tomorrow. To that end, Budget 2020 provides more than $200 million to support research, innovation, and commercialization, to develop and advance talent, and to help drive global investment. This funding will support growth in AI and machine learning, aviation and aerospace, and the finance and fintech sectors. We will work with our entrepreneurs and those with a bold vision for Alberta's future to ensure that government programs, including this funding, are supporting commercialization, attracting talent to Alberta, and establishing long-term jobs for Albertans. Another industry with immense potential is tourism. In fact, tourism is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, with global traveler expenditures expected to double in the coming decade. A blueprint for jobs includes development of a 10-year tourism strategy to support our goal of doubling tourism spending in Alberta to $20 billion by 2030. A blueprint for jobs also includes an infrastructure approach that puts a focus on long-term job creation. Over the next 3 years, we will invest an average of $6.4 billion per year building schools, healthcare facilities, roads, and other infrastructure Albertans need. To accelerate job creation, government will work with industry and municipalities to identify and prioritize strategic transportation corridors for development that will improve productivity, attract investment, and support economic growth. Analysis is underway to identify investments that support job creation, both in their construction phase and into the future. While there's much work to do on the jobs front, there are reasons for optimism. Canada has a new free trade agreement within North America, and we call on the federal government to ratify the Canada-US-Mexico agreement as soon as possible. Economic uncertainty in Europe is easing with Brexit clarity. Trade relations between the United States and China, which stoked fears of a global recession, are improving. The Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers is projecting a $2 billion increase in Canadian energy investment in 2020, which signals the first increase in oil sands investment since 2014. Alberta is on track to lead the country in economic growth over the next 2 years. Real GDP growth is forecast to rebound to 2.5% in 2020 and average just under 3% between 2021 and 2023. But we know there are still risks out there. And as the coronavirus is affecting communities across the globe, we're seeing the impacts of decreased economic activity in the financial markets. That is why we're focused on what we can control, creating an attractive business environment and restraining spending. While we work to expand our economic capacity to increase job opportunities for Albertans, we're also making overdue changes to modernize and streamline the delivery of public services. The Mckinnon panel found that Alberta's spending per capita is the highest in Canada and has been for the last 25 years. We would be spending $10.4 billion less every year if our per capita spending simply matched the average of British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec. And our higher spending hasn't purchased better results. Budget 2020 keeps our 4-year fiscal plan on track to move our per capita spending levels in line with Canada's largest provinces, with a clear focus on achieving results. We made a commitment to Albertans that we would not cut health care or education spending, and we have kept our promise. Hear, hear. Budget 2020 maintains health spending while taking meaningful action to improve the health care system. The recently released Ernst & Young AHS review identified a number of opportunities to reduce costs while improving system performance, with all the savings reinvested into frontline services. Over the next 3 years, AHS will implement the Alberta Surgical Wait Times Initiative that includes contracting with independent surgical providers with a goal to perform an additional 80,000 surgeries by 2023 and dramatically reduce wait times. Funding for a new mental health and addiction strategy will provide hope to those caught in the cycle of substance abuse. As outlined in Budget 2019, we will deploy up to 4,000 additional addiction and mental health treatment spaces. A new funding model in education will provide school boards with the flexibility and, more importantly, the predictability they've been seeking. The new formula better manages student growth, streamlines the large number of grants to reduce duplication, simplifies reporting, and directs funding to the classroom instead of administration. As our students transition from high school to post-secondary, there will be a focus on programs that result in good, tangible careers. A new outcomes-focused funding model for post-secondary education will provide base support for institutions and then top that up with performance-based incentives. Budget 2020 continues new training opportunities to prepare students and adults for lucrative jobs in the skilled trades, with funding to Skills Canada Alberta, Women Building Futures, new veterans and trade scholarships, and doubling of the number of schools that work with Careers the Next Generation. These skills will be necessary as the economy picks up and as a large segment of the population retires over the next 10 years. There are currently thousands of available jobs in transport truck driving in Alberta, even while thousands of Albertans remain unemployed. A blueprint for jobs will make new tools available to those who would make a career as a Class 1 truck driver. Our government committed to better protect rural Albertans from crime, trespassing, and vandalism. A new police funding model will support our fight against rural crime by putting hundreds of new RCMP and civilian positions in rural communities. We are funding 50 new prosecutors and expanding drug treatment courts to mitigate the cycle of addiction-related crime. Budget 2020 will also introduce a number of modernization initiatives that reduce costs to the justice system. We are moving away from paper records to digital forms and e-courts to save nearly 1 million court visits, 2 million hours, and over $400 million in the first 5 years. This will result in improved justice capacity and the ability to focus resources on the front lines. We committed to support Alberta's most vulnerable, and Budget 2020 keeps us on track. Funding for children's services will increase nearly 10% by 2023 and will assist in ensuring children have an opportunity to grow up in a safe and caring home. Community and social services will provide $11.7 billion over the next 3 years, caring for adults and families in need of support, for people with disabilities and the homeless. 2020 will mark an important year in implementation of the Mckinnon panel recommendations. The panel found that Alberta has the highest total per capita compensation for all public sector jobs compared to other large provinces. Mr. Speaker, you cannot discuss a balanced budget without discussing public sector compensation. More than half of taxpayer dollars in Alberta are spent on staffing. It's our largest single expense. Since 2015, the public sector grew by more than 10,000 full-time equivalent positions, and salaries grew an average of 2.3% per year. Albertans simply cannot afford this. Alberta can no longer afford to be an outlier in the nation. Therefore, this government is acting on Mckinnon panel recommendations to bring public sector compensation in line with comparable provinces. We have a goal to reduce the overall cost of public sector staffing by 2.1% over 3 years. This is both responsible and fair and respects the realities of those working outside the public service. More importantly, it will ensure our ability to deliver high-quality services that Albertans expect now and into the future. That means that as collective bargaining begins with unions that represent 270,000 public sector workers, there's no money for pay increases. So again, I ask the nurses and teachers and the dedicated professional who serve Albertans every day, work with us as partners as we ensure a sustainable future for our public sector and the high-quality services you deliver. Mr. Speaker, for many years, Alberta has been the economic engine of the nation. We have made massive contribution to the national economy and to Canadian standard of living by adding $100 billion to the national treasury in the last 5 years alone. Over that same time frame, however, adverse market conditions have been made worse by federal policies that have created uncertainty, damaged conditions for investment, and otherwise hindered the province's economic recovery. During this most difficult period for the province in a generation, our contributions to Canada have not been reciprocated. Alberta is seeking a fair deal to address this imbalance. The Fair Deal panel is listening to people across the province regarding a new arrangement for Canada, or for Alberta within Canada, and will report back to our government this spring. While we're challenged with our current federal government, we do have a growing number of provincial allies on issues important to Alberta. With decisive leadership from our Premier, 9 out of 10 provinces are supportive of energy and resource corridors. 9 out of 10 premiers share our opposition to Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines law, and most provinces have joined us in opposing the federal carbon tax. And on our request for a retroactive $2.4 billion fiscal stabilization payment, Alberta has the support of all 10 provinces. After the federal election in October, the Prime Minister offered words of concern for the West and in support of national unity. Unfortunately, to date, they've only been words, and Albertans need to see real action. So I call on our federal government to unequivocally and tangibly support growth in the Canadian energy industry and our fair request for a retroactive fiscal stabilization payment. Mr. Speaker, balancing the budget is critically important for our future as a province, but Budget 2020 is much more than that. It's about continuing the intentional direction set out in Budget 2019, a direction that's grounded in responsibility and confidence. It's about delivering public services to Albertans in a more modern, cost-effective, and sustainable manner so they're available for future generations. It's about laying a foundation for the future, a foundation of economic growth, prosperity, and opportunity. And once again, I make a commitment to all Albertans that this government will work relentlessly to create job opportunities and to get a fair deal for Alberta within Confederation. Mr. Speaker, there are signs that in 2020 we will turn a corner and see real economic growth return to the Alberta economy. We are on track to balance the budget. We are on track to bring investment and jobs back to Alberta. We are on track to transform service delivery and to protect the most vulnerable. Albertans are responsible, resourceful, forward-looking, and hopeful. Together, we will achieve a strong, prosperous, and compassionate Alberta. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
The official opposition House Leader.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is definitely a lot to unpack here in this new budget, and I'm sure Albertans will have a lot to say, and I look forward to the upcoming debate to provide their feedback. And with that, I adjourn debate.
Honourable members, having heard the motion as moved by the Honourable Official Opposition House Leader, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. My opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered. The Honourable Government House Leader has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Finance Minister. Congratulations on a well-delivered speech. I could think of no better way to end the legislative week than that. So through you to all members of the Assembly, thanks for a great week of work. Wish you safe travels back to your constituency. And I move that we adjourn the Assembly until March 2nd, which is Monday at 1:30 p.m.
Members, having heard the motion as proposed by the Honourable Government House Leader, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered. The House stands adjourned until Monday, March 2nd at 1:30.